We may have a brand new low-cost MacBook coming. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. So today we have a fun video. Now I wanted to get your reaction on this because it's really interesting news. So today what we're seeing is reports coming out all over the place of a brand new kind of low-cost MacBook that Apple might be shipping maybe next year with the A18 Pro Chip. I mean, if you look at all the different rumor sites today, it's all over the news right now. And could this actually really be true? Now, for all the people that complain about MacBook pricing and how expensive MacBooks are, could you imagine a MacBook slotted underneath the MacBook Air finally giving those people a reason to buy a Mac? So in this video, stay tuned for why this may actually be true. I'm going to show you some examples here. Plus, we're going to talk about some benchmark comparisons. How fast would this device possibly be versus the M4 through the M1 Max that are basically you can buy right now. And then we're going to show you some more cool images of all the different possibilities of what this might look like. So we're going to have some fun with it. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, like I just said, right over here, here's Mac Rumors. It says new MacBook with A18 Pro Chip spotted on Apple code. You can see it right there. That's on Mac Rumors. Then we go over to Apple Insider. Apple plans low-cost MacBook based on iPhone processor. Here's a lead story here. And then finally over here, 9 to 5 Mac. Koi, Apple to release cheaper MacBook powered by iPhone processor. So it's literally all over the place. And we're going to start with Mac Rumors and see what they say. All right, right here from Mac Rumors, it says, earlier today, Apple analyst Ming-Chi reported that Apple is planning to launch a low-cost MacBook powered by the iPhone chip. The machine is expected to feature a 13-inch display. I figure it might even be 12, but 13 inches, maybe to save money, using the Air's display. And then the A18 Pro chip and color options, which we'll get into in a second. We won't address that now. But the reason I think this is actually more even legit is because it's not only being backed by this guy. This guy said a lot of rumors that have not been true, but this is actually also Mac Rumors. Take a look. Mac Rumors can now reveal that it has first spotted evidence of such a device in back-end code related to the Apple Intelligence last summer, and basically confirmed its use of the A18 Pro chip. The machine features an identifier number of Mac 17, comma 1 or whatever you want to call it there. But you can see that it's actually got an identifier number. Now, whether they're going to actually come out with this or it was just testing, it's another story. It says right down here, this would be the first powered by an iPhone chip. To date, all Apple Silicon Macs have contained the the M series chips, we know that, which offer higher core counts, support for larger memory and stuff like that. The A18 Pro, though, debuted in the iPhone 16 Pro last year. He says, according to Koi, the MacBook is expected to enter mass production in late to fourth quarter 2025 or earlier in the first quarter of 2026. He thinks it's going to launch in the first half of next year. So we're talking January through maybe June-ish of next year. That's actually going to be coming out. So it's going to be kind of fairly soon. It's not going to be like a couple years in the future. And this is, like I said, not only coming from him, but it's coming from Mac Rumors, who's also identified this, which is kind of crazy. Okay, now Apple Insider right over here, it says Koi is usually specific on his claims. He says that the new lower cost MacBook we saw enter mass production. We already talked about that, have the A18 Pro, we talked about that, 13-inch, but let's talk about the colors. It's going to have silver, blue, pink, and yellow. He's very specific about this, and I'll show you some examples as we're talking about this. So these are just some examples using AI, what they could possibly look like, right? It's got my mind kind of moving around there. I like the idea of having some colors there. We always talked about that. It says the A18 processor is currently used by Apple's, we talked about this. He says he further claims that Apple plans to sell between 5 and 7 million of the devices in 2026. So between this and other MacBooks, Koi says Apple wants to get back to the the COVID peak of 25 million sold across 2026. So they think, 5 to 7 million of these devices could be, definitely in there. And I think that's actually a possibility. It goes on to say the one area Koi has no claim detail is on pricing, but the sales estimate is aggressive, which implies a lower price. It is estimated that the screen size is correct. That would mean that the Mac is the same display size as the MacBook Air. So let's talk about pricing for a second. So we're thinking if the MacBook Air comes out at $999, but we always see it on sale for around $849, this device could be starting at $799, maybe $699, somewhere in that range. $799 to $699 is our estimate right here. Think about that for a second. Then with some sales from time to time, if, let's just say it becomes Christmas, and every once in a while you're going to be able to pick this thing up for $599 brand new, that would be a price point I think people would be on board with for sure. Absolutely, right? Post in the comments, would you guys buy this device as just a travel device or something for $599? Does it get the cost more into your realm of, I don't need it, but I'm going to buy it? I think it would at that cost for sure. It goes on to say, switching from the M series to an A series chip would certainly enable lower production costs, as the current Mac processors are physically larger and more complex, and we know that. The A series has fewer CPU and GPU cores, and it's not really built for the same heavy workload, so we know that. That would immediately mean that the low-cost MacBook would not be suitable for power users, but that's totally fine, because 80% of people out there are not power users. Now over here from 9 to 5 Mac, it says right in here, Koei says Apple is targeting, we just mentioned 5 to 7 million in this range in 2026, but they say that which would represent a significant portion of overall Mac laptop shipments, and it would. This suggests a pretty dramatic price point to attract such high volume sales. So that goes to beg the question. I mean, they're going to definitely attract a lot of people, but is it going to take away from the other MacBooks, or is it going to be adding a lot of people? We'll discuss that in a second. I think it's going to be actually the second part of that. I think it's going to be adding a lot of users that MacBooks are too expensive for, but we'll talk about it. So now let's actually get into like, what would this device be? How fast would it be? Would an A18 Pro chip be fast enough for a smaller MacBook like this, or a MacBook that's done for basic stuff? So let's take a look at some of the stats that we can see and just compare it right now. Let's first compare it to what's actually out right now, which is going to be the M4 chip. We know it's not going to be as fast as that, so take a look. Here's Geekbench 6 scores. Here's the M4 chip, and here's the A18 Pro chip. But you can see how close they are in single core. It's pretty amazing. 3767 versus 3587 or 82. They're very close. Now, when you get into multi-core, obviously there's going to be a bigger separation here. The A18 Pro is 9,000 versus even around 15,000 for the M4. But this is just, it's not that much of a difference here. And again, not power users means a lot of single core applications in use and single core use. So this is going to be kind of right on par with an M4 as far as single core performance. This is the M4 chip. So let's go back now to the M3 chip over here. So here's the M3 chip. And again, this is actually from a site called nanoreview.net. I want to give them some credit here as well. So here's single core. This is going to be the M3 chip. You can see that it's actually way faster here than the single core on the M3 chip is the A18 Pro, 3582 versus 3037. Now it's going to still be losing here on multi-core, but it's getting, fairly close here. So it's going to be, obviously in the multi-core, it's still slower, but here it's actually faster for the first time. So it's going to be faster single core than an M3 chip. But let's keep moving. Okay, so here's the M2 chip now, and you can see how much of a difference it is. So if you have an M2 Mac right now, look at this single core performance, the A18 Pro chip. It just blows it away. I mean, I don't know what that is, 50% faster there, 3582 versus 2623. And then multi-core, it's almost neck and neck. It's still a little bit slower. We can see that, but obviously, again, this is not going to be a multi-core device. And let's just wrap it up with the M1 finally over here. And let's just see what it says over here. So here's the M1. You can see that it's basically going to be, it's getting close to the double of the single core of the M1. And over here, it's actually faster than the multi-core. So if you actually have an M1 processor you're using just fine now, you're going to note that this is going to blow it away in single core and be actually faster in multi-core than the M1. And that's incredible. But it's also going to be just as fast almost as the M4 on single core. So now we're starting to see why this device could be a really good device for Apple, because it's going to be cheap for them to produce. And then they may have some extra of those chips laying around from all the iPhones that they produce and stuff like that. And it's going to get the price point down. Okay, now let's just talk about, are people really going to buy this device? Does it have a slot in Apple's lineup? Of course it does, actually. Think about this for a second. I just showed you performance. It kind of slots and checks all the boxes there for that kind of lower end device. Now, it's cost. I mean, we're talking $799 to $699 starting. That means $699 to $599 on sale, depending with student discounts and also when it goes on sale. Can you imagine a device brand new from Apple, full laptop, full Mac OS, with the chip that's almost as fast as the M4, faster than the basically as fast as the M2 on multi-core for $599? That would sell like hotcakes, I believe. Now, would it actually kind of take away from the MacBook Air sales? That's the question. I don't think so, because I think the MacBook Air, while people, there's a lot of people that just don't want to spend that much. They want to spend $300 to $400 on a laptop, and just getting it around that $599 cost would probably get those people to say, listen, I got to try a Mac, right? Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Looks like a nice device. Let's do it. I think that would be a huge upgrade for those people, and the Mac could actually get these people in the Mac ecosystem or the Apple ecosystem and expand them to the other devices later as they do more video editing and stuff like that. But I think this is the part that Apple was missing. They could do really well here, for sure. Now let's talk about the colors as well. So for the colors, they're going to be coming out with some really specific colors. And what are they going to be actually? Let me just see here. Okay, he says silver, blue, pink, and yellow. And I'm not sure if that's a darker blue or the sky blue, but I'm going to show you some examples here. But let's just assume that Apple wanted to make things fun. They wanted to make it like less professional because now we have these colors. So they come out with some kind of crazy, I'm showing you some examples as we speak. But even beyond this, let's say Apple gets really creative and they make the keyboards. The keyboard's the same color as the device. Take a look at some of these pictures, like this pink one here, a blue one. You get the idea. Or yellow, I'm sorry. They start making these devices like this, and it just looks really cool, right? Sky blue also. Maybe they have a sky blue one. These are all things they could be doing, and I think that color pop is going to make a big difference for a lot of these kind of lower end users. All the college students that want this, they want something unique and different. This is going to hit that exactly where they want it, right? So get rid of the black keyboard, I say. Color match the keyboards, make them really fun and make the colors pop. I mean, I'm showing you more pastel colors, make them maybe darker. I would love an orange in there as well. But this is going to be really cool. Now, he's claiming that he's already seen that these are going to be the colors, so we'll have to wait and find out. But I think the colors are a huge key here, especially for the low cost. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I'm not going to go much deeper into this because we don't know if this is actually true or just a rumor, but it's just fun to think about it because, of course, this is a device I think a lot of people like myself would pick up and actually travel with this one if we know we're not going to be doing a ton of work in case something gets stolen or lost. You're not going to be losing, a $2,000 machine. So I think it's perfect for that. And you guys, I want to hear all of everyone's comments definitely in this video. So post in the comments. Would you buy this, number one? Would you buy it for a second device if you already have a more powerful Mac? Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's going to ultimately be the downfall of Apple because they're going to be selling kind of lower end stuff when they always have been a higher end company? I just want to know your comments on it. So post in the comments. We will talk to everybody in the next one. This was a really quick video because it just came out today. We'll talk to you next. Peace.